Welcome back to Head to Heart Daily Devotionals, where we daily are reading through the book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke. It's been awesome thus far. Yesterday we just read the passage where Jesus is eating with sinners and tax collectors, and there's a bunch of commotion. It's been a cool little bit, and now we're going to enter in today with a little bit of more conflict between Jesus and the Pharisees, his nemesis of sorts. He always seems to be confronting them because they're the religious leaders of the day, and now here comes this new guy who's bringing new ideas to the table, who's kind of flipping things on their head that they thought they knew. They thought they were the perfect ones, but in comes the real perfect one, and he's just really turned things upside down for them, and we get to see that a little more today. So let's dive in. Luke 6, 1 through 19 is what we're going to be reading today. So starting chapter 6, verse 1. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat the kernels. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions. Then Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" So Jesus is establishing his authority here. He's not necessarily contradicting the law, but he's doing something. The Sabbath was a day set aside for rest, where you take time off of work. You don't do the things you normally do, but rather you rest, and you're just spending a day being grateful for God, day with God, being thankful for the things he's given you. And really it's a day set aside to just remember and reflect and focus on God. And so there's a lot of laws about keeping that day holy, not doing on that day what you do on other typical days. And so this is what the Pharisees are accusing him of. He's saying, hey, your disciples are out here eating food off of grain, which is unlawful on the Sabbath. And that's unlawful by their definitions of the law. The Pharisees are constantly accused by Jesus of heaping on extra things that are unnecessary, but they would establish all these extra boundaries so that they were very righteous and holy, and so that there was no way they could sin. But by doing all those things, they're like burdening people with all these extra rules and laws and traditions that they've created. And so Jesus oftentimes will come in and counter these extra laws that the Pharisees called tradition and law, but in reality it doesn't stem from God's word. So Jesus here is establishing his authority here. Verse 6, on another Sabbath he went into the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, and so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. So now you have these religious leaders all watching Jesus, and they're not watching him for the right reason. They're not interested in wanting to learn from him. Rather, these guys, you have a group of Pharisees, they're watching him like a hawk, waiting for him to slip up so that they can jump in and accuse him of something. They're just sitting there waiting for him to do something unlawful. So they watched him closely, see if he would heal on the Sabbath. Verse 8, but Jesus knew what they were thinking, and said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." So he got up and stood there. And now Jesus is going to turn to the Pharisees. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" He looked around at them all, and then said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was completely restored. So Jesus has just performed a miracle in front of these people. And you would expect a normal reaction at witnessing a miracle. A man with a shriveled hand, boom, Jesus says, "Stretch it out," and it's like, boom, restored. Miracle, crazy. You expect them to be like, whoa, how could we have judged this guy? Like, this is crazy. Miraculous power of God. But that's not the reaction we see from the Pharisees. We see the complete opposite. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. So the Pharisees now are even more upset with Jesus, even more angry, because he's healed someone on the Sabbath, which is unlawful. So this is just crazy. So there we see the tension with the Pharisees and Jesus heightening a little more. This is a significant moment. I think from here on, they're kind of starting to plot how to get rid of Jesus, and by whatever means necessary. Foreshadowing. Verse 12, one of those days Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. Wow, Jesus spends an entire night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he designated apostles. Simon, who he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called the Zealot, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. Come on, Judas. He went down with them and stood on a level place. A large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, and from the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Those troubled by impure spirits were cured, and the people all tried to touch him because power was coming from him and healing them all. I feel like the miracles now, they're being amplified. What Jesus has come to do, the message he's preaching, all of these miracles have a purpose. They're in the book of John, he often calls them signs. These are signs that the message he's bringing is true. They authenticate who Jesus claimed to be. If a man came to earth and claimed to be God, he better have the power of God. He better be able to do miracles such as God could do. And that's exactly what we see in the person of Jesus. We see miracle after miracle, every type of miracle. And so the man of Jesus, the things he's doing are authenticating the message he's bringing. And so that's really important to see. So the reflection question, I think it stems from verse 12 here. One of those days when Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent that night praying to God. And right after he prays, he calls his 12 disciples. And so I think what's really cool here, what's awesome, is that we see Jesus connecting with God, spending the night just praying with him and being in his presence right before making a major decision. These 12 guys who are going to be his apostles, the ones he sends out with his message and are in his inner circle. These guys were super important to Jesus and his ministry and the future of the church. And so Jesus, knowing this is a huge thing coming up, spends the night in prayer with God. And I think that's so awesome. And so the reflection question for me is this: do you spend time in prayer with God such as this before you make a major life decision? When you got a major life decision coming up, when there's a big thing, do you give the proper time, enough time of just genuine, intentional time sitting with God, asking, God, what is your will for me in this thing? Do you want this? Do you want that? Help me to see what you would have me do. So that's a really cool question. I hope that's helpful to you. And I think a prayer point that goes nicely with that is this: God, would you lead us today in your will for us? Not our own will for our life, but God, as we make big decisions, as we make small decisions, just as we go throughout our day, would you help us to look at or look for and seek what is your will for me today, not my own, not what I would choose to do, but what you would have me do. That's a really good prayer to bring before him. Thanks for tuning in. This is what it's all about right here. Being in the Word every day. I encourage you to keep joining us so that you on your own are in this. Don't just watch these videos. Read this on your own after or even before. Spend that time praying with God. Just really take this as a tool to encourage you and equip you. Check in tomorrow for the next video. Can't wait. See you then. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want. Here's a like. There's a like. Here's a like.